Have you ever wanted something so badly that it hurt, wanted it so deeply, so desperately, that the thought of letting it go felt like giving up a piece of your soul? Katy Perry knows exactly what that feels like, because before the world knew her name, before the world sang her songs, she was just a girl with a dream and 1,000 reasons to quit. She was born Katheryn Elizabeth Hudson in Santa Barbara, California, not into fame or fortune, but into faith. Her parents were Pentecostal pastors, strict, devout, and deeply spiritual. Katy's world was filled with gospel music, church services, and rigid rules. Secular music, off limits, the radio, turned off. And yet, somewhere inside her, something stirred. She wasn't born into music. She was called to it. As a child, she sang in church, not because she thought it would make her famous, but because music made her feel free. When her fingers touched the strings of a guitar, when her voice filled the room, it was like her spirit could finally breathe. She knew there was something beyond the walls she was raised in, something bigger, something louder, something electric. And so she started chasing as she listened in secret, snuck CDs past her parents, obsessed over artists like Alanis Morissette and Freddie Mercury. These weren't just singers, they were people who turned pain into power, truth into anthems. Katy didn't want to copy them. She wanted to find her own voice and use it to shake the world. At just 15 years old, she recorded a gospel album under her birth name, Katy Hudson. It was her first real chance. A small Christian label believed in her enough to give her a shot, but the album flopped. No tours, no radio play, no success. The label shut down shortly after the release. Just like that, her dream cracked for the first time, and she was only getting started. She moved to Los Angeles, barely an adult, armed with ambition and nothing else. No money, no fame, just faith in her music. And then came a second record deal, this time with a secular label. A new chance to finally break into the mainstream. And again, it collapsed. Dropped. Just like that. The songs she wrote, shelved. The plans, cancelled. All the momentum she'd been building, gone overnight. And if you think getting dropped once is painful, imagine getting dropped twice before the world even hears your voice. But she didn't stop. She picked herself up again and signed with a third label. Another chance, another dream. And once again, it fell apart. 3 record deals, 3 heartbreaks, 3 moments where the world essentially said, "You're not enough." Most people would have quit. Most people would have taken the hint, packed their bags, and gone home. But not Katy. Because when you're reborn to do something, when the fire in your gut refuses to go out, quitting doesn't feel like relief. It feels like death. Katy Perry was broke. She was couch surfing. She was borrowing money from friends just to buy taco. There were days she didn't know where her next meal would come from. Days where rejection felt like a brick on her chest. She started to question everything. Her voice, her talent, her identity. Was she delusional? Was she chasing a fantasy? The industry had slammed doors in her face more times than she could count. Executives told her she didn't have the look, that her style was confusing, that she didn't fit the mold. But maybe the mold was the problem. She didn't want to be the next someone else. She wanted to be the first Katy Perry. Unapologetic, unfiltered, unafraid. And so, even in the darkest moments, she kept going. She wrote songs for other artists. She played tiny shows in small venues for almost no money. She hustled, she networked, she knocked on every door, even the ones that had slammed on her before. And every time she got knocked down, she rose with a little more fire, a little more grit, a little more refusal to be forgotten. Because Katy Perry didn't need everyone to believe in her. She just needed one, yes, one shot, one crack in the wall big enough to break through. That kind of hunger, you can't fake that. It's the kind that keeps you up at night, the kind that makes you write another song when your heart is shattered, the kind that pushes you to stand in front of a crowd when you've just been told no for the 100th time, the kind of hunger that doesn't go away because it's who you are. She once said, if you're presenting yourself with confidence, you can pull off pretty much anything. But that confidence wasn't handed to her. It was carved from failure, forged in rejection, built brick by brick, moment by moment, when she should have given up, but didn't. Imagine being told you weren't good enough by 3 separate record labels. Imagine being broke, alone, and invisible in a city that chews people up and spits them out. And then imagine waking up the next morning and saying, "I'm not done yet." That's what makes Katy Perry's story powerful. Not just the hits, Not just the tours, but the tenacity. Before she ever hit a stage, she stood face to face with failure and didn't blink. And that's where real greatness is born. Not in spotlights, not in stadiums, but in silence, in struggle, in the moments where no one is watching, but you keep going anyway. Because here's the truth. Every dream worth chasing will test you. It will break you down before it builds you up. It will ask you who you really are, and it won't accept easy answers. Katy Perry answered that question with everything she had, and she kept answering it. Every time she picked herself up, every time she wrote another verse, every time she believed when no one else did. You don't need to be perfect to succeed. You just need to be relentless. Katy wasn't born on a stage. She didn't explode into fame overnight. She fought for it. She bled for it. She refused to give up on herself, even when the world already had. What would you do if your dream was alive, but your bank account said it wasn't? If your heart still burned with ambition, but your reality was cold, broke, and full of doubt? That's where Katy Perry found herself. She had no money, no backup plan, just a suitcase full of hope and a dream that refused to die. After being dropped by 3 record labels, Katy could have walked away. She could have blamed the industry, blamed luck, blamed anything. But instead, she packed her bags and headed for Los Angeles, the city of angels and broken dreams, with nothing but her voice and her fire. She slept on couches, rotated from one friend's place to another. Sometimes she had nowhere to go. She lived off peanut butter, instant noodles, and whatever someone was kind enough to give her. Her car became her closet, her dreams, her fuel. Every rejection echoed in her mind like a cruel chorus. You're not right. You're not ready. You're not enough. But she kept going. She refused to let go of the music inside her. If no one would give her a stage, she'd write anyway. She wrote in kitchens, in bedrooms, on the floor, on the bus. She worked as a backup vocalist. She wrote songs for others. She sat in recording studios for hours, unpaid, unnoticed, unwanted, because Katy believed something that the world hadn't realized yet. That her voice mattered, that her story was still unfolding, and that the beat hadn't dropped yet. She worked odd jobs to survive. Anything to stay in the game just a little longer. Took meetings that went nowhere. Smiled through rooms full of doubt. And still, every day, she chased that one breakthrough. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't need a perfect moment. She just kept showing up. And then, everything started to change. In 2006, after years of silence, a whisper of a chance arrived. She caught the attention of some key players at Capitol Records. One more door cracked open. One more label. One more risk. And Katy took it. She met producer Dr. Luke, and together they began working on a song. A song that would start as a spark and explode like wildfire. It was bold, unapologetic. It was everything Katy had always been, but had never been allowed to be. The song, I Kissed a Girl. From the start, it was different. It was loud. It was playful. It was rebellious. And it sounded like her, not a version of her someone else had tried to shape, but the real, raw, radiant Katy Perry. But the industry wasn't sold. Some executives still doubted her. Some thought the song was a gimmick, that she'd never sustain a real career, that she'd be just another flash in the pan. A one-hit wonder in waiting. They called her quirky, weird. They didn't know what box to put her in. And in their world, if they can't box you, they ignore you. But Katy had spent years being ignored. She wasn't interested in boxes anymore. She was interested in breaking them. In 2008, Capitol released I Kissed a Girl, and the world exploded. The song shot to #1 in more than 20 countries. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 7 consecutive weeks. Radio stations couldn't play it enough. Teens, rebels, dreamers, and outcasts finally saw someone who wasn't afraid to be different, someone who embraced it. Katy wasn't just singing a pop song. She was kicking down a door. She was loud. She was colorful. She was polarizing. And for the first time ever, she was being heard. After years of silence, her voice was now unavoidable. But success didn't wash away the scars of struggle. Fame doesn't erase years of being told you're not enough. Even with a hit, the questions came fast. Is she for real? Can she do it again? Is she just a lucky shot? And those whispers, they hurt. Because what the world saw as an overnight success had actually been a decade in the making. 10 years of grinding, of writing, of failing, of starting over, again and again and again. She was finally on top of the charts, but deep inside she was still fighting to prove that she belonged there. She got back to work. Fame had arrived, but Katy didn't rest. She wrote, she recorded. She prepared for the next chapter, because she knew that one hit doesn't make you a legend. Consistency does. Persistence does. Showing up after the cameras are off, when the lights go dim, when no one is cheering. That's what makes you unstoppable. And Katy, she was just getting warmed up. With her next single, Hot and Cold, she proved she wasn't a one-track wonder. She had range, she had fire, she had an entire soundtrack of a generation living inside her, just waiting to be released. And through it all, she stayed herself. Bright, bold, playful, honest. She didn't water herself down to fit into someone else's image. She didn't trade her uniqueness for acceptance. She amplified it. That became her superpower. Her refusal to conform. She turned every wound into a lyric, every insult into armor, every no into a chorus. Her fame grew, but she never forgot what it took to get there. The nights she cried into a pillow. The days she went without food. The emails that went unanswered. The songs that were shelved. The hopes that were shattered. She carried those memories with her, not as weights, but as reminders of how far she'd come. She once said, "It's not about getting a big break. It's about staying in the game long enough for one to find you." And she did. She stayed. When 3 record labels dropped her, she stayed. When the world overlooked her, she stayed. When the industry laughed, she stayed. She showed up when it hurt. She showed up when it made no sense. She showed up when her bank account said stop and her heart said go. Because somewhere deep down, she believed. Not in luck, not in fame, not in trends, but in herself. That belief, that's what changed everything. Because that's what real success is built on. Not talent alone, but trust. Trust in yourself when nobody else does. Trust in your journey when the road looks broken. Trust in your voice when the world turns down the volume. Katy Perry's story isn't just about pop stardom. It's about relentless belief. Belief that outlasts rejection. That survives silence, that refuses to quit, and that kind of belief. It's inside you, too. You don't have to be born a star. You don't need a perfect path. You just need to keep going. Through the no's, through the setbacks, through the doubt, keep showing up. What happens when your wildest dreams finally come true? When the lights hit your face, the crowd screams your name, and the charts say you've made it. For Katy Perry, that moment arrived like a tidal wave. Not a whisper, not a ripple. A full-blown eruption of stardom. After years of rejection, heartbreak, and struggle, the world was finally listening, and she didn't just break through. She broke records. The year was 2010. Her album Teenage Dream hit the airwaves, and what followed was nothing short of historic. 5 singles from that one album hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. That had only happened once before, and it was Michael Jackson who'd done it with Bad. Now, Katy Perry stood beside him in history. But this wasn't just about chart positions. This was about finally being seen, heard, validated. Millions of fans around the world sang along to her lyrics. Lyrics that once lived only in the quiet corners of her notebooks. Songs like California Girls, Teenage Dream, E.T. Last Friday Night, and Firework weren't just hits. They were movements. And Firework, that one was personal. It became an anthem for anyone who had ever felt invisible. A call to every misfit, outsider, or doubter who'd ever wondered if they mattered. When Katy belted Baby, You're a Firework, come on, let your colors burst, she wasn't just singing. She was reminding us that we all have something powerful inside. She wasn't just performing anymore. She was uplifting. But even in the spotlight, shadows linger. Fame didn't erase Katy's pain. It didn't soften the pressure. If anything, it intensified it. The cameras followed her everywhere. Every outfit, every word, every relationship became tabloid fodder. The internet, once a place for connection, turned cruel. Strangers judged her appearance, her choices, her voice. The same world that lifted her up began to pull at her. And behind the glittering lights, Katy was still human. She went through heartbreak, a very public divorce, personal struggles that no #1 hit could heal. There were nights she cried herself to sleep, wondering if the love she gave the world would ever come back to her. She once said, "I've learned that you can be famous, you can be successful, and you can still feel alone." Fame gave her a platform, but it didn't shield her from pain. And yet, through it all, she kept showing up. She kept writing, creating, evolving, because Katy Perry wasn't interested in staying safe. She was interested in growing, and that growth led her to something deeper. She began using her voice for more than just entertainment. She became an advocate for mental health, for LGBTQ+ rights, for equality, for kindness. She spoke out when it wasn't convenient. She stood tall when it wasn't easy. And she learned how to use her fame as a force for good. She partnered with UNICEF to support children around the world. She raised awareness for countless causes, showed up for rallies, and put her money where her message was. Because the girl who once slept on couches now had a global microphone, and she wasn't about to waste it. And just when people thought they had her figured out, she redefined herself again. With songs like Raw, Katy Perry reminded the world, and herself, that she wasn't just a pop princess, she was a warrior. I got the eye of the tiger, a fighter, dancing through the fire. That wasn't just a lyric, that was her life. She had walked through fire, rejection, ridicule, heartbreak, and come out stronger. And Raw wasn't just a comeback, it was a declaration, a reminder that even when the world tells you to stay quiet, you roar anyway. Her music took on new depth, unconditionally, rise, never really over. Each one, a layer of her soul, each one, a lesson in resilience. She showed us that reinvention isn't weakness, it's power. And that is one of the greatest lessons Katy Perry teaches us, that you don't have to be the same to be real. You can evolve, change, mess up, break down, come back, and still be you. Because life isn't about pretending to have it all together. It's about finding the strength to keep moving forward, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. Katy's journey isn't perfect, and that's why it's powerful. She reminds us that it's okay to outgrow old versions of ourselves. That it's okay to not always have the answers. That persistence isn't just about pushing forward. It's about growing through the pain. Through the heartbreak, she discovered healing. Through the criticism, she found clarity. Through the spotlight, she embraced service. She didn't let her past define her, she used it. Every no that once crushed her became a note in her song. Every fall became part of her choreography. Every scar became part of her story. And that story, it's still unfolding. Because success doesn't have an endpoint. It's not a finish line. It's a mindset. Katy Perry is a living example that persistence outlasts pressure, that authenticity outshines approval, and that the most powerful thing you can ever be is yourself. No matter what the world says, no matter how many times you fall, no matter how far you feel from where you want to be, believe anyway. She did. And look where it took her. So if you're watching this right now, wondering if your moment will ever come, let this be your reminder. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need everyone's permission. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to keep going. Write the song, make the call, take the risk, cry if you need to, scream if you must, rest if you have to. But don't quit, because you don't know how close you are to your breakthrough. You don't know which yes will change everything. You don't know when your firework will finally light the sky. But when it does, it will be yours, earned, and fully you. And when it happens, the world won't just hear your voice. They'll feel your story. They'll feel your fire. They'll feel you, just like they felt her. Hey dreamer, fighter, believer. If Katy's story lit a fire in you, this channel is made for you. Here we tell the real stories. The stories of people who've fallen, failed, and risen anyway. Stories that remind you that rejection isn't the end. It's the beginning of resilience. That pain doesn't destroy you, it builds you. So if you're ready to stop waiting and start becoming, hit that subscribe button right now. We're just getting started. And remember, every legend started with a no. Every hero began in the dark. And every was once just a spark.